Hi guys, welcome to Relationship Stories with TaleTime. The first one is titled, Golden Child Brother Framed Me for a Felony I Never Committed. I'm innocent. The story starts like this. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but I really need to share my story and get this off my chest. I'm a 28-year-old woman and I've always tried to live an honest life. I have a steady job as a dental hygienist and I've been with my amazing boyfriend Liam for 3 years now. We even adopted an adorable golden retriever puppy named Charlie last year and we're saving up to buy a house together. I feel like I have a good life, but my family situation has always been complicated, to say the least. My parents always played favorites with me and my younger brother Joshua. He was the golden child who could do no wrong in their eyes. They praised everything he did and brushed off any of his terrible behavior. Growing up, Josh constantly lied and manipulated my parents, but they always believed him over me. He would break something or steal money from my mom's purse and then point the finger at me. My parents ate it up every time. I remember one particularly bad incident when we were teens. Josh was caught smoking weed in his room, but he told my parents that he was just holding it for me. Despite me being a straight A student who never got in trouble, they took his word over mine. I was grounded for a month and forced to apologize to Josh. I was seething with anger, but I bit my tongue. I knew they would never believe me. As we got older, I hoped things would change. I thought maybe my parents would start to see Josh for who he really was. But if anything, it got worse. When Josh dropped out of college after 3 semesters, my parents said he was just finding himself. When he totaled his car after drinking and driving, they bought him a new one because everyone makes mistakes. The double standards were infuriating. I did my best to keep my distance from Josh and my parents. I moved out as soon as I could and focused on my own life. I went to college, got my degree, and found a good job. I met Liam and I was really happy. But of course, Josh couldn't let me have that. He would randomly stop by my apartment unannounced to check on me. He always wanted to know what I was up to and who I was hanging out with. It felt like he was trying to catch me doing something wrong. I hated it, but my parents insisted that I was lucky to have a brother who cared so much. I felt like I couldn't completely escape him. Little did I know that Josh was about to take things to a whole new level. I had no idea that my own flesh and blood was capable of something so cruel, so unforgivable. I would soon find myself in the most unimaginable situation, my life completely shattered by my brother's despicable actions. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To really understand the gravity of what happened, I need to take you back to the day that started it all, the day my brother almost ruined my life and sent me to prison for a crime I didn't commit. Buckle up, because this is one hell of a ride. It was a Tuesday morning and I was at work when I got the call. I remember it so vividly because Tuesdays are always my busiest day at the dental office. I was in the middle of cleaning a patient's teeth when my phone started buzzing incessantly. I ignored it at first, but it just kept going. Finally, I apologized to my patient and stepped out to see what the emergency was. The caller ID showed it was Liam. My heart dropped. He knew never to call me at work unless it was something really serious. With shaking hands, I answered the phone. Liam? What's going on? Babe, you need to come home right now, Liam said, his voice urgent and strained. The police are here. They have a warrant for your arrest. I felt like the floor was giving out beneath me. This had to be some kind of sick joke. What? That's insane. What am I being arrested for? There was a pause on the line. Drug possession with intent to distribute. They're saying they found a huge stash of pills and cocaine in the apartment. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. That's impossible. There must be some mistake. I'm coming home now. I rushed out of work, barely stopping to tell my boss there was an emergency. The whole drive home, my mind was reeling. How could there be drugs in my apartment? I've never even touched the stuff, let alone sold it. This had to be some huge misunderstanding. But when I got to my building, it became horrifyingly clear that this was really happening. There were 3 police cars parked outside, their lights flashing. I steeled myself and went inside. The moment I stepped through the door of my apartment, I was grabbed by an officer and pushed against the wall. Maya Thompson, you are under arrest for possession of illegal narcotics with intent to distribute. I was in complete shock as they handcuffed me and read me my Miranda rights. Liam stood by helplessly, tears in his eyes. Please, this is crazy, I pleaded with the officers. I don't know anything about any drugs. This is a mistake. The lead detective, a burly man with a mustache, shook his head. Ma'am, we received an anonymous tip about drug activity at this address. We came with a drug dog and he alerted right to your bedroom closet. We found nearly 500 pills and 3 kilos of cocaine in a duffel bag. That's no mistake. My head was spinning. None of this made sense. Can I see it? Where exactly did you find this bag? The detective walked me back to our bedroom, Liam trailing behind. He pointed to the very back corner of our walk-in closet. Right here. Tucked behind some shoeboxes and under a pile of sweaters. And that's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. The memory came flooding back. Just the day before, Josh had stopped by unannounced as he so often did. He said he needed to borrow a sweater since all of his were dirty. I told him to grab one from my closet. At the time, I thought it was odd since Josh is a lot bigger than me and my boyfriend. But he was being so weirdly insistent that I just told him to be quick so I could get back to the dinner I was cooking. He was in our room for a while, which I chalked up to him probably snooping around. But now, seeing exactly where those drugs were found, I knew with chilling certainty what had happened. Josh had planted them there when he was pretending to get a sweater. He must have known about the anonymous tip. He orchestrated this whole thing. I tried to explain this to the police, but they just exchanged skeptical looks. In their eyes, I was just another drug dealer trying to talk my way out of an arrest. It didn't matter that I had no history of drug use or that I had a steady job and a loving relationship. As they led me out of my apartment in handcuffs, past my wide-eyed neighbors, I felt completely hopeless and betrayed. How could my own brother do this to me? I knew he couldn't stand to see me happy, but this was too cruel. He was really going to let me go to prison for his crime. Sitting in the back of that police car, my whole future crumbling in front of me, I made a promise to myself. I was going to prove my innocence, no matter what it took. I was going to show everyone that my brother was the real criminal. But I had no idea the nightmare that awaited me. Clearing my name would be the fight of my life. The next few days were a blur of fear, anger, and disbelief. I was booked and processed, my mugshot taken as I struggled not to cry. The whole time, I kept thinking there had to be some way out of this. Surely the truth would come out. They would realize I was innocent. But that hope started to dwindle as I sat in a holding cell, waiting for my arraignment. Liam managed to scrape together enough money to bail me out, but the look on his face when he picked me up said it all. He was trying to be supportive, but I could see the doubt and confusion in his eyes. Maya, please be honest with me, he said quietly as we drove back to the apartment. Is there any chance those drugs could be yours? I won't judge you if you got mixed up in something. We can figure this out. His words cut me like a knife. Even Liam wasn't sure if he believed me. I swear on my life, those aren't mine. I'm being set up. I would never lie to you. But I could feel a wall going up between us. And that was only the beginning. Word spread fast about my arrest. Suddenly, I went from a respected dental hygienist to an accused drug dealer. My boss called me into her office and said that while she wanted to believe me, she had to put me on suspension pending the results of my case. She couldn't risk the reputation of the practice. I called my parents, desperate for support. But the moment I told my mom what happened, she broke down in sobs. Maya, how could you do this to our family? What did we do to deserve this shame? Mom, please listen to me, I begged. I didn't do this. I was framed. I think it was Josh. The line went silent for a beat. Then my dad's booming voice filled my ear. How dare you accuse your brother of such a thing? First you get caught with a mountain of drugs, now you're trying to drag Josh down with you? No, I won't stand for these lies. I was speechless. My own parents thought I was a liar and a criminal. They believed Josh's feigned concern over their own daughter. I could hear him in the background, playing the part of the worried brother. Maybe we can get her into a rehab program. I just want my sister to get help. I hung up on them, hot tears streaming down my face. I was completely alone in this. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into building my defense. I met with the public defender assigned to my case, a burnt-out and overworked man named Ray. He listened to my story about Josh framing me, but I could tell he was skeptical. Maya, I've heard a lot of tales in my day. You're going to need more than a hunch to prove your brother did this. The prosecution has a lot of evidence against you with the drugs being found in your apartment. This is a serious charge with intent to distribute. You're looking at years in prison if convicted. Those words sent a chill through my body. Prison. The full gravity of the situation was sinking in. I could lose everything, my freedom, my relationship, my future. My one glimmer of hope was my best friend Mia. She was the only person who believed me without question. She sat with me for hours, holding my hand as I cried and raged. We're going to beat this, she kept saying. Josh won't get away with it. But as the court date loomed closer, that hope began to fade. Ray was trying his best, but the prosecution's case was strong. They had me dead to rights with the drugs in my apartment. It was my word against a mountain of evidence. To make matters worse, Liam and I were fighting constantly. The stress and the doubt were eating away at our relationship. He kept asking if I was sure I hadn't relapsed into old habits. I was furious. Not only did I have to prove my innocence to a court, I had to prove it to the man I loved. Meanwhile, Josh was milking the situation for all it was worth. He made a big show of being there for my parents, playing the part of the loyal son while I was painted as the black sheep. He even had the nerve to show up at the courthouse for my hearings, shaking his head sadly as if it pained him to see me like this. I wanted to scream every time I saw his face. As the trial date got closer, I sank into despair. The prosecution offered me a plea deal, 5 years instead of 10 if I pled guilty. Ray urged me to consider it. Maya, I'll fight for you if you want to go to trial. But I have to be honest, the odds aren't in our favor. With the plea, at least you'd have some light at the end of the tunnel. I broke down in his office. Was this what my life had come to? Rotting in a cell for 5 years for a crime I didn't commit while my brother got off scot-free? The betrayal, the injustice of it all was suffocating. I was backed into a corner with no way out. The life I had built for myself was crumbling before my eyes. But in my darkest moment, a flicker of determination sparked to life inside me. I couldn't give up. I had to keep fighting, even if it seemed hopeless. I couldn't let Josh win. But I needed a miracle. And I needed it soon. Because the way things were going, I was on a fast track to a prison cell and losing everything I held dear. I was at my lowest point, ready to resign myself to my fate, when Mia burst into my apartment with a wild look in her eyes. I have an idea, she said breathlessly. It's a long shot, but it might be our only chance to catch Josh in the act. I was skeptical, but I was desperate enough to try anything. Mia laid out her plan. Think about it. Josh framed you once and it worked perfectly. He's probably feeling pretty invincible right now. What if we could bait him into trying it again? The gears started turning in my head. You mean, like, set a trap for him? Mia nodded. Exactly. We make him think you're vulnerable, that he has another opportunity. And this time, we'll be ready. It was a huge risk. If it didn't work, I could be facing even more charges. But if it did work, it could be my ticket to freedom. I took a deep breath and agreed. The next day, Mia came over with a bag full of spy cameras. We spent hours carefully placing them all around my apartment, covering every angle. Then, I called Josh. Hey, I know things have been tense, I started, trying to sound shaky and defeated. But I could really use my brother right now. Do you think we could talk? I could practically hear the smirk in his voice. Of course, sis. I'm always here for you. I'll come by tomorrow. The trap was set. Now all we could do was wait. The next day, I made sure to be out of the apartment when Josh was set to arrive. Mia and I sat in her car down the block, hunched over a laptop streaming the camera feeds. My heart was pounding out of my chest as we watched Josh enter my apartment. At first, he just walked around, poking through my things as if he owned the place. But then he went into my bedroom and straight for the closet. Mia and I held our breath as he reached into a backpack and pulled out a familiar duffel bag. Oh my God, he's doing it, Mia whispered. He's actually doing it again. We watched in horrified fascination as Josh carefully hid the duffel bag, just like last time. He was so methodical, so practiced. It made me sick to think how long he must have been planning this. After he left, Mia and I rushed back into my apartment. With shaking hands, I pulled the duffel bag from its hiding spot. Inside was an even larger stash of drugs than before. We called the police immediately. When they arrived, we showed them the camera footage and the drugs. They were stunned. The lead detective turned to me with an apologetic look. Ms. Thompson, it looks like you were telling the truth all along. We're going to call the prosecutor right now and get the charges against you dropped. I burst into tears, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of relief and vindication. After months of living this nightmare, the truth was finally coming out. The police put out a warrant for Josh's arrest. They picked him up the next day while he was out getting coffee, completely unsuspecting. He tried to talk his way out of it at first, but when they showed him the camera footage, he crumbled. It turned out that Josh had gotten involved with a major drug ring. He was in debt and had started skimming from the product to sell on the side. When his suppliers started to get suspicious, he must have panicked and decided to frame me to take the fall. It all came out in his confession. He admitted to planning the drugs not just once, but multiple times over the past few months, escalating each time. He even revealed that the anonymous tip to the police had come from him. The detectives were flabbergasted by the level of sophistication and manipulation. They said Josh was likely a sociopath. But I could have told them that. I'd known it all my life. With Josh's confession and the overwhelming evidence, the prosecutor had no choice but to drop all charges against me. In one fell swoop, I was cleared of everything. The nightmare was finally over. When I walked out of the courthouse a free woman, Mia was waiting for me with open arms. We hugged and cried, barely believing it was real. The sense of relief was indescribable, but it was bittersweet. Even though I was innocent, the ordeal had taken a heavy toll. My relationship with Liam was strained to the breaking point. My career was in shambles. And my relationship with my parents. I wasn't sure if that could ever be repaired. But I was alive. I was free. And most importantly, the truth had prevailed. Josh's twisted game had been exposed for all to see. He was looking at serious prison time for not just the drugs, but for falsely accusing me and obstructing justice. It was a hollow victory in some ways. So much damage had been done, so much pain caused. But it was a victory nonetheless. And as I walked out into the sunlight, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. The road ahead would be tough. I had a lot of rebuilding to do. But I had cleared my name. I had stood up to my manipulator and won. And that gave me the strength to face whatever came next. In the weeks and months following my exoneration, I struggled to pick up the pieces of my life. The trauma of the ordeal had left deep scars. I had trouble sleeping, plagued by nightmares of being back in that jail cell. I jumped at every knock on the door, always fearing it was the police coming to take me away again. Liam tried his best to be supportive, but the trust between us had been fractured. He couldn't quite shake the nagging feeling that I had hidden something from him, even though I had been fully vindicated. We started fighting more and more, until one day, he packed a bag and said he needed some space. I watched him walk out the door, not knowing if he would ever come back. My job at the dental office was gone. They said they were happy I was innocent, but the scandal had been too much. They couldn't have me back. I was left unemployed and adrift. But the worst was facing my parents. After everything came out, they tried to apologize. They showed up at my door, tearful and remorseful. "We're so sorry we didn't believe you," my mom sobbed. "We should have known better. Can you ever forgive us?" I looked at them, these people who were supposed to love and protect me unconditionally. They had turned their backs on me when I needed them most. They had chosen to believe the worst about me while coddling their golden child. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I don't know if I can. You were ready to let me rot in prison. You didn't even try to hear my side. That betrayal. It's not something I can just forget." They left my apartment dejected, but I couldn't bring myself to feel bad. They had a long way to go to earn back my trust, if they ever could. In the end, I decided I needed a fresh start. I couldn't stay in that apartment, in that city, with all those painful memories. I needed to go somewhere new, somewhere I could rebuild my life on my own terms. I packed up my things and moved across the country to a small town by the beach. I found a little cottage to rent and a job at a local cafe. It was a far cry from my old life, but it was peaceful. Slowly, day by day, I began to heal. I went to therapy to process the trauma. I made new friends who knew me only as Maya, not as the dental hygienist accused of being a drug dealer. I learned to find joy in the simple things again: a walk on the beach, a good book, a warm cup of coffee. Liam and I tried to make it work long distance, but in the end, we couldn't overcome the strain the ordeal had put on our relationship. We parted ways, but not with anger. Just with sadness and acceptance. My relationship with my parents remained strained. They tried to reach out, to visit, but I kept them at arm's length. I couldn't forget how they had failed me. Maybe one day I would be ready to let them back in, but not yet. As for Josh, he was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison. I went to the sentencing hearing, watching from the back of the courtroom as he shuffled in his orange jumpsuit and shackles. He looked small and pathetic, nothing like the looming monster he had been in my nightmares. When it was my turn to give a victim impact statement, I stood up on shaky legs. I looked Josh in the eye and told him how his actions had almost destroyed me. How he had taken away my freedom, my relationships, my sense of safety. But I also told him that he hadn't broken me. That I was stronger than he ever gave me credit for. As I walked out of that courtroom, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Josh's chapter in my life was closed. I was free of him, truly and completely. It's been a year since everything happened. My life looks nothing like it did before, but I'm okay with that. I'm building something new, something that's all mine. I still have scars, both visible and invisible. I still have moments where the trauma rears its head. But I'm learning to live with it. I'm learning to find peace. I don't know what the future holds. But I know I'm not afraid anymore. I survived the worst thing imaginable. I survived my own brother's betrayal. And I came out the other side. I'm not just surviving now. I'm thriving. And that's the greatest revenge of all. Wow guys, this story absolutely blew me away. I can't even begin to imagine the absolute hell Op went through. To be betrayed by your own brother like that, to have your entire life ripped away from you, all because of his selfish, sociopathic actions. It's just unthinkable. But even though Op was vindicated in the end, it broke my heart to see how much damage had already been done. Her relationship, her career, her family ties. All shattered. It really goes to show that even when justice prevails, the scars of trauma run deep. And guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. If you cannot get enough of my content, please subscribe to my channel, like the video and post a comment to support me. I will see you again tomorrow.